Let's go to page 272, extending the predominant area. Now, we've already talked last semester about tonic expansion and dominant expansion, but you can also expand the predominant and extend it as well. So here's a couple of easy ways to do it. And the first way is called using the chordal skip. A chordal skip means that you don't change your harmony, you just change the inversion. Okay, so here's a root position, here's the first inversion, and here's the second inversion of a triad. So that's an easy way to do it. You can even revoice. So in this Beethoven example, listen to this. This is actually a piece I know. I've played it with orchestra, the whole thing, 3 times. Now that I've bragged a little bit, I hope I don't wipe out in front of y'all. Here we go. You're probably all wondering, why did she roll that first chord? It doesn't say that, but actually that is how they would have done it in the 19th century in a slower or medium tempo. If they had chords to roll, they would do it. It's not a style we like anymore. But anyway, that's for another class. Listen one more time. We start with the 1 chord. Changes to 5, 1, 6, root position 2, and changing by inversion expands the predominant area there. Just a simple voice exchange. Do you see the X between the 2 and the 2-6 chord there? That's called a voice exchange between 2 voices. In this case, between the bass and the soprano. They just change notes. A to C in the bass and C to A in the soprano. That's all that is. So that's one easy way to do it. Just change your inversion of the chord. Now, let's move on to the thing called the 4-2 complex. The second technique is more subtle. I can't say subtler very well. So the second technique is more subtle, yet it is often considered to be more important. Progressions whose roots move by step, that is between 4 and 5, are especially vulnerable to parallel perfect intervals with the voice leading, especially when the outer voices are moving in the same direction. That's why we were telling you in the previous discussion, move by contrary motion, because if you move by parallel motion, you're going to have parallels everywhere. So in order to avoid that, you can use what we call a voice leading chord, and it breaks up the parallels, and it's quite clever. So let's examine example 9.11 A and B here. We're going to show you how to make what we call a 2 and a 4 complex. It's 2 different chords that are united into one harmonic area with some voice leading numbers going on. So let's look at letter A. Okay, so did you see where there was parallels? Parallel fifths between soprano and the bass. When it's harmonized, it conceals it a bit, but not enough. So that's a no-no because you've got PP5s between the soprano and the bass. So in order to get rid of that, look at letter B. F, G. That's very clever. So you've got 1, a 4 chord, and a 2-6, and now a 5-7. Just by changing the soprano to anticipate, we call that G an anticipation because it anticipates the chord that's coming on the next motion. Now, is that really a 4 chord changing to a 2-6 if only one voice moved? I don't think so. So the more appropriate way to represent that is right underneath. I've got circled the 4 chord where a voice moves from 5 to 6. So it's still a 4 chord with a voice leading motion. That, my friends, is what we're talking about with the 2-4 complex. Instead of calling it a 4 chord moving to a 2-6, we're just going to say no. Just call it a 4 with a 5-6 voice leading motion, and that represents it better, okay? Now let's look at letter C. Parallels are avoided with individual chords. So let's see what's going on here. So Another way to avoid having parallels is to literally change the chord to a 5/7. So again, this one was all about the parallel motion with PP5s in letter A. To avoid that, you can either change a 5-6 voice leading motion, or letter C. You can literally change the chord from a 4 to a 2 in root position. And both letters B and C fix the problem in letter A. So let's see. We have in D1 an example from Mozart. Now, Mozart was trained by his father, but his father used the greatest training book of how to do part writing ever written by Johann Fuchs, and we talked about him last semester. So Mozart could not bring himself to break any rules that he had learned. So he comes up with a clever solution in bar 5, how to get out of the dilemma of having parallel fifths. Let's take a listen to this one. Here it comes. So look down at D2. Here would have been the problem going from 4 directly to a 5. You would have had parallel fifths someplace. But instead, look at it becomes via a chromatic D sharp in there, changing it to a 2/6. So that's how he fixed it. And there's another way you could do it. Move like that. As long as you don't go like that. Okay? So listen again. If I would have left it, that would have been the problem. So he D sharp E and turns it into a 2/6. Very clever of him.